What's going on, guys? Dare here with Fantasy Football Advice, coming at you with another fantasy football video. Today, we're going through our projections, and the goal today is to touch on some of those mid-round receivers. I know we did the draft or pass, but these are going to be some guys that we have not talked about all that much, so it's better to get their names floating around there. So if you're unsure on how we feel about them, this is probably the video for you. Like I said, the projections are available in our draft package, along with draft rankings, risk ratings, the machine learning model predictions, access to our private community, and more. So if you are interested in that, we have a way to get it for as low as $10. You're going to be getting a ton of information for a really low price. So if you are interested in that, go ahead and take a look at the link in the description box below and sign up today. But with that, let's get into the stat of the day. So today's stat of the day, since we're talking about wide receivers, is which fantasy relevant wide receiver, he's not going to be an early round guy, but had the highest percentage of snaps from the slot. And it was actually at 89%. So which fantasy relevant wide receiver had the highest percentage of his snaps from the slot at 89%? Leave your answer in the comments section down below. And if you haven't quite gotten a stat of the day right, fear not, there's still plenty of time left, okay? So leave your answer in the comment section down below, and we'll be happy to let you know who wins in tomorrow's video. But on to the video. The first player we're going to talk about is Alshon Jeffery. Alshon's been pretty disappointing to own if you've had him any of the past 2 years. He's kind of gotten hot and cold, and you would think after playing all of 2017 semi-successfully, he would come back in 2018 when he was healthy, because remember, he had that torn shoulder, and perform better than he did, and he didn't really get there. He finished the season with 65 receptions for 843 yards and 6 touchdowns, but the big thing was that his total targets dropped by nearly 30, and for a healthy receiver, that was disappointing to see. But remember, we also had Nick Foles in for a large majority of that season. The offense was destined for regression, and now he's actually coming in at a value this year. To our knowledge right now, Carson Wentz is healthy, and what we do know is that when Carson Wentz plays, his fantasy production increases. In fact, he has averaged 2.5 more targets per game and 1/4 of a touchdown per game. And so basically, there is some upside this season. He's being drafted as wide receiver 30. We have him as wide receiver 24, and the current projection is 77 receptions for 1,000 yards and 7.4 touchdowns. It's actually the 18th highest projection among wide receivers. But remember, he is a little bit risky, and he is boom or bust, and the health of his quarterback is a clear concern. But moving on. The next receiver we have is Calvin Ridley of the Atlanta Falcons, and he really broke out similarly to what we were seeing with Juju Smith-Schuster. So I can see why a lot of people are high on him this year. He's currently going as the wide receiver 25, 5 spots ahead of Alshon Jeffery. Last year, if you remember, since we were relating him to Juju was going as the wide receiver 19. So the community is slightly more bullish. He doesn't really have a ton of buzz around him. He finished with 64 receptions for 821 yards and 10 touchdowns. And he's definitely going to see regression from the touchdown department, especially when it comes to touchdowns on a per target basis. But there's still plenty of room for his volume to increase. He only had 92 targets last season and only playing on 62% of the snaps. From year 1 to year 2, you should see that snap percentage increase into around the 80s. More snaps, more opportunities, more targets, more volume. So in the projections right now, we have him for 112 targets, 73 receptions, 916 yards, and 9 touchdowns. It's the 20th highest projection currently, and considering he's being drafted at ADP of wide receiver 25, that seems like it's a value. So if you're in that range looking for a receiver and you're a little bit hesitant on Calvin Ridley, just know that we do have him as a target. So look for him to build off of his already successful rookie season. The next wide receiver we have is Christian Kirk of the Arizona Cardinals, and for being as high as we are on Kirk, we have not talked much about him at all. And it basically comes down to a few things. We do expect this offense to be much improved under Cliff Kingsbury and Kyler Murray, this up-tempo, high-volume offense. It's not going to be hard to beat what that offense did last season. They ran the second fewest plays per game and were dead last in points per game. And where does Christian Kirk fit in this this offense, while he should be the top receiver, we do like Andy Isabella, and we think he can have a good season as well. But Larry Fitzgerald is aging. Christian Kirk is the future of this team, and he was a second-round pick last season in the draft. He had a good SparkX score, an extremely early breakout age, and a solid college dominator rating. So we definitely feel like this projection for him is extremely reasonable. It's 77 receptions on about 119 targets for 966 yards and 6 touchdowns. Right now, he is coming off the board as the 33rd wide receiver. We have him right now as the 28th wide receiver off the board. So again, another value on our list. Moving on, we have Tyler Lockett of the Seattle Seahawks, who is coming off of a breakout campaign of his own. He had 10 touchdowns on an extremely low volume passing offense. He played in the slot, he played outside, he performed very well in all areas, especially when you dive in on his Pro Football Focus advanced metrics. So it's really tough to not be at least somewhat interested in Lockett. His ADP is largely going to depend on how this preseason shakes out. We have DK Metcalf, polarizing pick from the draft. If Metcalf looks bad and Lockett is clearly the top option, then you should definitely expect to see his ADP to climb upwards into the 4th round. And if that's the case, that's definitely a pass from us. He's not a bad pick in that range by any means, but you're basically buying him at his ceiling at that point because Russell Wilson's coming off of a perfect passer rating season when targeting him, so there's really only one way to go from there. Right now we have him projected at 69 receptions on 99 targets for 926 yards and 6 touchdowns. So keep an eye out on him and how this offseason shakes out. Right now, we can't fully recommend to target him or avoid him, but he is definitely an interesting prospect. Up next is a guy I don't think we've talked about at all, and that's Tyler Boyd of the Cincinnati Bengals. And I can't say that we're interested in owning any shares of Tyler Boyd. We're interested in owning every player, don't get me wrong, but when their ADP is a little higher than we'd like, we tend to just not own them completely, and Tyler Boyd falls into that category. You have AJ Green returning. We aren't 100% confident in his health, but likely it is going to impact his target market share if he's not the top wide receiver on the team. It could help him from an efficiency standpoint, but don't forget, John Ross is still on the team, and you have to expect his volume to increase. And while he did perform very well last season, just understand that it's the offense of the Cincinnati Bengals, and it's led by Andy Dalton, and there's not going to be a ton of upside for this offense in general for the whole entire season, let alone to support a potential wide receiver 1 in AJ Green and bona fide RB1 in Joe Mixon with enough trickle down value for Tyler Boyd to have a consistent wide receiver 2 production season. It just doesn't all add up, and we'd prefer to take shots on offenses with a little bit more upside. Regardless, we do have his projection pretty reasonable. It's still high. It's 112 targets for 77 receptions, 956 yards, and 4 touchdowns. So it's not that we're projecting him to completely disappoint. It's just there are a lot of other players in this area that we think make better draft picks for your team. We have 2 wide receivers left, and the next player is Will Fuller of the Houston Texans, who currently has an ADP of wide receiver 34. We do expect him to start slow because, of course, he's coming off of recovering from his torn ACL, and him himself is a boom-bust type of player, not typically the players that we enjoy owning. We like to be able to predict the fantasy production when we're putting players in our lineup. Will Fuller's always been more of a touchdown guy, and touchdowns, as we know, are fluky, but it is on a good offense, and there will be weeks where you would wish that you started him, and then there's going to be others where he's going to score just like about 4 points. So a much better best ball player and a much better DFS player, especially considering he is recovering from an injury. So it's likely a pass from us. Our projection for Will Fuller has him at 94 targets, 54 receptions, 834 yards with 7 touchdowns. We get it if you want to take a shot on just having maximum weekly upside, but again, these are the types of players that we tend to avoid, especially when they're coming off of an injury, and a serious one at that. The final player that we have on this list is going to be Mike Williams, and I know a lot of you in the comment section have been very high on Mike Williams, and we've been pretty clear that he's been in a void, and it's not that his ADP is not fair, because there are a lot of players on that team that cannot stay healthy. Every single one of them, in fact. You have Hunter Henry, Keenan Allen, Melvin Gordon. Each one of them has had season-ending injuries in the recent years, and if those injuries were to occur, Mike Williams is going to step in and instantly gain production from any which one of those injuries. But the only real issue that we see right now is that last season he scored 10 touchdowns on just 43 receptions. It's a stat line that is headed straight for regression. You have Hunter Henry returning, who should be one of the higher targeted players on this team in the red zone. He's currently coming off the board though as wide receiver 24, and that doesn't leave a lot of wiggle room for upside barring an injury. And for that, we're not going to just draft him and hope for an injury. We do still have him ranked as wide receiver 26, and our projections do have him squared out at 113 targets, 59 receptions, 814 yards, and 6 touchdowns. It is the 35th highest projection, but we do have him ranked currently as wide receiver 26. He does have some signs of a potential breakout this year, but it's hard seeing that coming straight to fruition without a few things having to go his way. Alright guys, that's going to do it for this video. If you want access to all of these projections, don't wait for the video. These projections are updating all the time. Make sure you have the most up-to-date information and sign up for a draft package. Not only do you get these projections, you get the rankings, risk ratings, machine learning model prediction, access to our private community, and more for one very, very low price. So if you want access to that, use the link in the description box below. But if you made it this far, please leave us a like. And if you're new to the channel, please make sure to subscribe. We thank you all for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.